The crowd of 4,600 roared as Elvis stepped onto the stage. Drenched in golden light, ready to perform one of the greatest shows of his career. But just as the first song began, his eyes narrowed. Through the cheers, the applause, and the thunder of guitars, he heard something else, a child crying uncontrollably somewhere in the audience. Everyone else ignored it. But Elvis couldn't. The arena pulsed with energy, a sea of flashing lights, waving signs, and voices chanting Elvis's name like a hymn. People had traveled from cities, states, even countries, just to be here tonight. For many, it wasn't just another concert. It was the moment they'd dreamed of for years. And when the curtain finally rose and Elvis stepped into the spotlight, the audience erupted so loudly it felt like the ground moved. Elvis smiled, tipping his mic as the opening chords thundered across the stadium. He lived for this moment, the connection, the music, the joy. This stage was where he felt most alive. But then, halfway through the first verse, something rippled through him. A sound small, fragile, cutting through the roar like a crack in glass. A child crying. It shouldn't have been possible to hear. Not with 4,600 people screaming in excitement. Not over drums, guitar, bass, and amplifiers stacked taller than a man. But he heard it, not with his ears, but with his heart. He faltered. Just for a second. The audience thought it was part of the performance. The band kept playing. But Elvis's eyes were no longer on the spotlight, on the cameras, or on the crowd cheering his name. They were searching, scanning the rows, the aisles, the blur of faces. He didn't find the cry right away. All he saw at first were fans flooded with joy, people dancing, clapping, laughing. But then, on the left side of the arena, 2 rows from the back, he noticed something that didn't match the celebration. A mother holding her child close. Her head bowed, her lips moving in apology. The little boy curled into her chest, shoulders shaking violently, face wet with tears. The sound cut deeper the longer Elvis watched. To everyone else, the concert was perfect, but in that pocket of the arena, a world was falling apart. Elvis felt a strange weight inside his chest, heavy and unshakable. For a moment, he wasn't Elvis Presley, the icon, the star, the legend. He was simply a man remembering what fear felt like, what loneliness felt like, what it felt like to be small and overwhelmed by a world too big to understand. The music swelled around him as though urging him to continue, to stay in the rhythm of the show, but he couldn't. He took a step back from the microphone. Then another. The band exchanged confused glances. The crowd murmured, sensing something off. With a subtle motion, he lifted his hand. Stop. The music cut instantly. Silence washed over the stadium like a wave. Nobody knew why he stopped. Nobody understood what he was doing. But Elvis didn't owe them an explanation, not yet. He just kept searching the child's direction until their eyes finally met. In that instant, Elvis knew the concert could wait. A child needed him more. A ripple of confusion spread through the audience the moment the music stopped. People looked at one another, whispering questions, unsure whether this was a dramatic pause or a technical mistake. But Elvis wasn't giving theatrics. His focus was entirely locked on the trembling child in the back row. Without a microphone, without explanation, he stepped down from the stage. Security froze. In the decades of concerts, Elvis had never just walked into the crowd mid-song. Camera operators scrambled to follow him, unsure whether to zoom in or hold back. The lights, programmed to follow him only on stage, drifted awkwardly until a spotlight finally trailed behind him like a halo. He didn't walk like a superstar. He walked like a man on a mission. As he descended the stairs and moved into the aisle, people instinctively parted. Not because security pushed them aside, but because they felt the gravity of something real happening. A mother gasped and covered her mouth as Elvis passed within inches of her. Fans clutched their chest, some crying already, before even knowing why. Every step seemed slower than the last, as though he wanted to give the little boy time to breathe, time to prepare. The closer he got, the quieter the arena became. The waves of cheering and excitement faded until there was only stillness. 4,600 people holding their breath. Watching a legend walk toward a child, the boy's mother noticed the silence too late. When she finally looked up and saw Elvis approaching, her entire body jolted. Her eyes widened in shock, and she clutched her son tighter, as if expecting she'd be reprimanded or escorted out. She began apologizing frantically, words tumbling out so fast they broke. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, he didn't mean to. We'll leave, I didn't know he would." But Elvis wasn't there to scold. He wasn't there for a dramatic moment. He was there because that boy mattered. He knelt. The arena gasped. Elvis Presley, the icon, the king, the untouchable figure of music history, bowed to the level of a frightened child, with his head lowered in respect. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't perform for cameras. He whispered softly, gentle enough that even the mother could barely hear. "Hey there, little man. You're safe. Nothing here can hurt you. I promise." The boy looked up slowly through blurry, tear-soaked eyes. He wasn't afraid of Elvis. He was afraid of the world, of the noise, of everything that had felt too big and too loud since the moment he arrived. His tiny hand gripped the front of his small shirt. Knuckles white with tension, Elvis extended a single hand. Not grabbing, not pulling, just offering. The child hesitated, breathing unevenly. The crowd didn't dare make a sound. For a few seconds, it felt as though time was suspended. Then the boy reached out. His hand landed in Elvis's with the fragile trust only a child could offer. And in that moment, 4,600 people didn't see a superstar with a fan. They saw a human seeing another human. Elvis rose slowly, the child's small hand still wrapped around his fingers. The boy's breathing was shaky, but the raw panic in his eyes had softened, replaced by a fragile, flickering trust. Gently, Elvis brushed away a tear from the child's cheek and gave him a soft smile before lifting him carefully into his arms. The stadium, once a thunderous storm of excitement, was now so silent that the echo of Elvis's footsteps could be heard as he carried the boy back toward the stage. Fans stepped aside reverently, as if witnessing something sacred, not a performance, but compassion in its purest form. When Elvis reached the steps of the stage again, the boy clung to him even tighter, burying his face into Elvis's shoulder. The camera zoomed in now, broadcasting the boy's tiny trembling body on the screens that towered above the crowd. Many in the audience pressed their hands to their hearts. Some didn't bother hiding tears. The band waited, tense and unsure. They didn't know what Elvis wanted to do next, but they trusted him. The same way the child now did. Elvis gently adjusted the microphone and whispered to the band, soft. Something soft, they understood. The guitars disappeared first, then the bass, leaving only the quiet hum of a piano. Elvis didn't face the camera. He didn't address the crowd. He looked only at the boy, as if the rest of the world had faded away. "It's okay," he murmured. "Your heart can rest for a while." He began to sing. Not a planned song. Not a radio hit. Not one of the fan favorites waiting in the Instead, he let his voice drift into a melody he hadn't sung publicly in years. A song his mama used to hum when he was scared at night. A lullaby full of hope, warmth, and the reassurance that even the smallest soul is never alone. His voice, normally powerful enough to fill stadiums, softened into something infinitely more profound. More human. More vulnerable. The child's breathing steadied. His tiny fingers relaxed against Elvis's shirt. Tears dried. The trembling stopped. Slowly, his head slipped onto Elvis's shoulder. Heavy with exhaustion and comfort, the crowd watched, mesmerized, not by a celebrity, but by a man who remembered what it was like to be that child. People held their own children closer. Hands found hands. Hearts opened. The band joined quietly, layer by layer, creating a sound that felt like a blanket being placed around everyone present. Lights dimmed into a warm glow, embracing the scene in golden tenderness. As the final note lingered in the air, the child was asleep, face peaceful, breath calm. Elvis continued holding him long after the song ended, as if letting go too soon might break the spell of safety he had created. And around him, 4,600 people sat in stillness, their hearts full, their spirits humbled, knowing they had just witnessed a moment that would never be repeated. The last soft note of Elvis's lullaby floated into silence, and for a long moment, nobody moved. No cheering, no clapping, no noise, just the sound of 4,600 hearts beating in unison. Every eye in the arena was locked on the sight of Elvis holding the sleeping child, his hand gently supporting the boy's back as if he were carrying the most precious thing in the world. The cameras zoomed in on Elvis's expression. Not the glamorous smile the world knew, but something raw, vulnerable, almost fatherly. The moment the audience saw the shimmer of emotion behind his eyes, the first wave of tears broke. A woman in the second row covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. A man who stood tall moments ago lowered his head, wiping his face before anyone could see. A teenager who came only for excitement leaned against her mother, whispering, "I don't know why I'm crying, but I am." It wasn't sadness. It was recognition of love, of tenderness, of humanity. People held their partners tighter. Some put their arms around strangers. It didn't matter who they were or where they came from. They were united by the sight of a superstar, choosing kindness over fame. Slowly, the piano began again, soft, barely noticeable. Like a heartbeat returning to a body that had been still, the lights warmed into a golden glow, bathing the audience in the same compassion Elvis held in his arms. 2 rows from the front, a little girl reached out her hand toward the stage. Her voice trembling, he made the boy feel safe. Her words weren't loud, yet the emotion behind them echoed through the stadium. Her father placed a hand over his heart, finally surrendering to tears of his own. And it continued. A ripple of emotion traveling across every section of seats. People who walked into the arena as strangers were suddenly bound together by a moment that had nothing to do with music. Elvis didn't ask for applause. He didn't try to turn the moment into a performance. He simply stood there, holding a child who needed love, and by doing so, reminded thousands of people how powerful compassion can be. No song had ever touched the crowd the way that silent moment did, and they knew this night would be remembered forever. Elvis took a slow breath and stepped toward the microphone, the sleeping child still resting peacefully against his shoulder. The entire stadium leaned forward, waiting not for entertainment, not for glamour, but for meaning. His voice, usually strong and commanding, came out soft and trembling. "I know you all came here for music tonight," he said, pausing to swallow the emotion blocking his throat. "But sometimes, life asks us to stop the show and remember what love looks like." The screen behind him showed the boy's small hand curled against Elvis's chest. The sight sent another wave of emotion through the crowd. A few sniffles echoed loudly in the silence. Elvis continued, "I used to be this little boy once, scared of the dark, scared of the noise, scared of the world. And someone held me, until I believed I was safe." He looked down at the child, and you could hear the softness in his voice break. "If this stage ever stops me from being human, then I don't deserve it." A tear slid down his cheek, not forced, not performed, just real. And when 4,600 people saw it on the screen, they broke again, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming purity of what they were witnessing. Elvis kissed the child's forehead gently, walked toward the mother, and placed him back into her arms with a care that felt sacred. The mother's tears streamed freely. She mouthed the words "thank you," but no sound came out. Elvis leaned close and whispered something only she could hear. "You're not alone. You're doing great. He's strong. He's gonna make it." Whatever those words meant, they melted the mother completely. She hugged her son tightly, her whole body trembling with relief. Elvis returned to the microphone one last time and spoke to everyone, not as a performer, but as a man. Music matters, but love must always be louder. For the first time that night, the applause didn't explode. It rose slowly, like a sunrise. People stood to their feet without hesitation. They clapped through tears, through shaking shoulders, through hearts that felt newly opened. And Elvis didn't raise his hands to receive the praise. He didn't take a bow. He simply smiled, humbly, softly, and whispered into the mic, "Let's always take care of each other." Those words stayed in the air, long after the concert ended, and in the hearts of 4,600 people, who walked out of that arena believing a little more in kindness.